A beautiful drawing that fails to communicate is actually worse than an ugly drawing that manages to do so. These are the latest plans of my multi-residential project, which I've been showing around in my YouTube videos. And I'm showing them to you now because a couple of weeks ago, I posted a few videos about architectural drawings. And one of you commented that as many drawings as I showed, I never really explained what makes a good drawing. And I think that this is a fair point. I even answered saying that I was going to address the matter, and I failed to do so until now. So that's what this video is all about. Because here's the truth. You've probably seen a number of architectural drawings, yet you weren't able to make heads or tails of it. And that's really not your fault. So what makes a good drawing? Or maybe let's go even deeper and ask ourselves, what are drawings for? Because the answer to both these questions is a simple one, and that is to communicate. And if they fail to do that, then they serve no real purpose. And how do we as architects manage to communicate our ideas clearly through our drawings? Well, the answer to that question is through hierarchy. So how do we achieve this hierarchy? We achieve it through three fundamental concepts. We have to keep it simple. With only 3 line weights, we can manage to communicate everything we really need to communicate. And these 3 are as simple as they sound: thick, medium, and thin. We use the thick lines to illustrate objects which are cut, such as walls or sections. We use the medium lines to illustrate visible objects, such as furniture, steps, and so on. And then the thin lines are reserved for references. So we use them for dimensions, textures, annotations, that kind of thing. And that's it. You don't need more than that. With these 3, we should be fine. Otherwise, we start to get muddled. However, there are a few nuances. I just said that we use the thick line for cut elements, okay? Yet, we don't apply that for doors, for instance, or windows. Doors are usually drawn with a medium line, and windows, I at least draw them with several thin lines. And already with this simple trick, you can see that a plan makes a lot more sense. Why? Well, because of that hierarchy I was just mentioning. Look at the plan I just showed of my project, how it is working with all these lines. These are the thick lines, these are the medium lines, and these are the thin lines. So let me show you what that looks like when everything is with the same line thickness. See how much more difficult that is to actually understand? So a bad drawing probably has all the information there, but simply because it's lacking hierarchy, you cannot really understand it, or it requires a lot of effort from your behalf to understand it. Let me give you a somewhat related example. In my videos, which I quoted at the beginning of this one, where I explain the process behind these plans, where I explain how I'm making this project, my audio, as many of you didn't hesitate to say, was not on point. And you're absolutely right. My audio was terrible. I'm trying to fix it, by the way. Let me know if the audio is better in this one. Because the audio was not as good, it makes that much more difficult to understand what I'm actually trying to communicate through that content. So you're constantly thinking, is this worth the extra effort? Well, when you look at a bad architectural drawing, you're thinking the same thing. Is this worth the extra effort? For the stakeholders, it usually is, but you're making life a lot harder for everyone with a bad drawing. This concept of line thickness actually comes from a phenomenon that fascinated Leonardo da Vinci, and that is aerial perspective. It's the phenomenon that explains why everything which is farthest from the eye is blurrier, it's harder to read, it's not as crisp. And this is what architects borrowed and started applying in our own plans. I didn't know any of this until I read Walter Isaacson's brilliant book about Leonardo da Vinci's life. Fascinating read, recommended. I'll put it in the description below as well. Now, if you like this line of thought and this kind of content, I'm sure you love my newsletter, which I'm trying to put out on a weekly basis. So don't hesitate to subscribe. Links in the description below. Now we go to line types. And here we use 4 different line types. We use a solid line to represent visible elements. Then we have the dashed line or hidden line, which is precisely to show hidden elements, such as furniture underneath another furniture. Or in this section, for instance, I'm drawing the elevation of my neighbor that is projected behind the party wall with a hidden line, because that line is still important for all the stakeholders, but it is invisible. Then we have the dot dashed line. This is reserved for imaginary lines. So center lines, axes, and limits, such as property limits. In this plan, for instance, the property limit is drawn with a strong dot dashed line. So are the structural axes. And then we have the dotted line. This one is for what the thin line was before. It's reserved for references. So we do a dotted line to circle an area that we want to make bigger on another plan, we want to reference, or we simply want to annotate something about. For instance, when I'm drawing a building permit, I would usually do a dotted line around the area, which is the one that is going to suffer changes, so that it's clearer for everyone looking at my project. Color in technical drawings is a tricky issue. I use it, but I tend to use it sparingly, because I know that if I add a lot of color, I may confuse people, and I'm adding levels of hierarchy, which could make reading the plan harder. So I had to constantly ask myself, am I adding this color because I want to make the plan look prettier, or is it really helping the readability of that plan? Because if it's the former, then I should take it out. Now, if you're working in your own project and you think it could benefit from my insight, don't hesitate to book a one-on-one with me. Links in the description below. So to go back to that comment, asking me what makes a good drawing, let me refer to Donald Judd's quote. It was the simple expression of complex thought. I absolutely love that quote, and I think it also applies to good architectural drawings, while bad architectural drawings are more the complex expression of simple thought. I'm being a bit too aggressive, but you get my point. But that is what a good drawing is for. It's to communicate ideas clearly, without efforts and without confusion. And that's what I'm trying to do with my projects. And that's what I like to call architecturing, the art of communicating ideas clearly. Now, if you found this useful, I'm sure you'll find my newsletter quite interesting. And again, if you want to book a one-on-one with me, don't hesitate to do so. And finally, let me know what you think about the audio in this video.